Okay, so we're going to get on with our business, and I want to introduce Danielle Walker. She's going to be, we like to call her the MC. Danielle is the secretary of We the People by You, and she's an amazing asset. Also, she heads up State of Freedom podcast along with Chris Alexander, and it's an amazing expose on all things legislative and political in Louisiana. So, Danielle, welcome, and I'll give you up.
Thanks for the kind introduction, Vicki. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for taking some time in the middle of your week to come out and have some lunch with us and meet Dr. Fleming. What I'm going to do here is just introduce Dr. Fleming. I'll give him a few minutes to give some remarks, and then I'll come back up for some Q&A. And I think that's all my job is today. Is that all my job is today? This is better? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. We're good. Okay. Awesome. Well, it's such an honor and a privilege to have Dr. Fleming here. He also is running for U.S. Senate, and he served a lot of roles in public life. But before public life, he was a doctor. He's in the military. He's a businessman. And then when he entered public life, he served in Congress for 4 terms from the 4th District. He was a founding member of the Freedom Caucus, and he also served in the first Trump administration from Health and Human Services, Department of Commerce, and then in the White House as Deputy Chief of Staff. So we're so pleased to have you with us, Dr. Fleming. Please welcome.
It's okay, I'll take the mic. I can do this more. Yeah, please do. I hate podiums. I hate any barrier between me and you. Don't let anything stand between us.
There you go.
There we go. All right, great. Thank you, and thank you. Great to be with my homies from Homa. Thank you very much for inviting us. And what I'd like to say is a little bit about myself, because I think it's important for you to know where I stand on things and why I stand on things. It has a lot to do with my upbringing and my experiences in life. What I'd like for you to know is that I grew up in a working class home where we struggled like a lot do. My dad was a lineman for the power company, and we would sit around the kitchen table trying to figure out what bills we could pay this month and what we could put off. That was character building, and I learned a lot from them. At age 11, I accepted Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, and He's been with me ever since. He's got here with us. So I was very close to my grandmother, who was an LPN nurse, and she used to regale me with stories about the hospital. Now that's a HIPAA violation today, you can't. But I used to love it. It was like having your own soap opera. And she really got me very interested in medicine. And also, I became committed to a career in medicine, because if you're committed to God, if you want to serve God, you want to serve the people, right? And what better way to do that than a physician? Although I chose to do it in other ways later on, as you know. So I committed myself to going into medicine. I got all the way to the end of the high school. I was ready to go to college. I had everything lined up. My dad suddenly died of a heart attack at age 43. And I didn't know if I'd even get to go to college, much less medical school. Leaving a disabled mother and 2 younger siblings, wasn't sure I could make it. Anyway, one thing led to another. I got a few loans. I got a few scholarships. I'd work in the summertime for $1.60 an hour. That was minimum wage back then. And one job I had a lot of these jobs throughout my career in college. One was I was a houseboy for a sorority. Now, if you don't know what a houseboy is, it's basically a waiter. So I waited on the ladies. And I didn't get paid, but I got 2 free square meals a day. And you know the best chow on campus is in the sororities. And I got to flirt as much as I wanted. Thought it was good. So anyway, I got got through college, I went on to medical school, got through my first semester of medical school, and I ran out of money again. But it just happened that Congress at that moment, because they had ended the draft, they could not draft doctors anymore. They needed to bring them in some manner. So they came out with what's called the Health Profession Scholarship Program, which is active today, that puts young adults through both medical school and dental school. And when I heard about it, I ran down to the recruiting station. I was the first one, I think, in the country. And after a very intrusive physical exam, they swore me in, and I was in the United States Navy, and I was happy for it. They did pay my way through school. Now, the military will issue you a lot of things, but a wife is not one of them. You have to find your own. So I was on the ward one day as a senior medical student, and this beautiful brunette with a ponytail and a little cap. You know, remember the nurses in the back in the day used to wear those caps? Which I think they're cute. I think they should be brought back. I said this the other day, and a big burly guy raised his hand. He says, "I'm a nurse." No, sir, I do not. I did not want to take it with him. Anyway, so she asked for my autograph. Well, that's my version. Her version is slightly different. She says that she was asking me to co-sign an intern's order. We may never agree on that, but what we do agree on is that I did capture her phone number. And after a 2-year courtship, we've been married 48 years on June 3rd. We're very proud of that. We have 4 grown children and we have 6 grandchildren. We're very proud of those. So off to the military we went after medical school, after my residency in family medicine. And we were stationed 2 years on Guam. I delivered hundreds of babies while I was on Guam. There's not much to do on Guam. Snorkel and have babies, that's good. Sometimes I delivered them during hurricanes, but I didn't get any special pay for that. So after 6 years in the Navy, I was very proud to serve in the Navy, and frankly would have done it even if they hadn't given me a scholarship, because I so admire the people who serve our country in the military. Standing in the gap, willing to lay their lives down just for our freedoms. That is a wonderful thing. And so I certainly always recognize and admire our veterans. In fact, I think you, sir, I believe as a veteran, you stood up too, didn't you? Are there any other veterans? I want to be sure we recognize. Yes. So, and the reason is, like, my dad served in World War II in the Army Air Corps. I had one uncle who served with the 101st Airborne at Bastogne, another one with Patton in Germany, another one with the Marine Corps in the Pacific. And these were all icons in my life. So I was glad to do it, even if they hadn't put my way through medical school. And that's carried over into my time when I was in Congress. I served on the House Armed Services Committee. This was during, of course, the Afghanistan and Iraq War. Always happy to make sure that we're fully equipped. We don't ever want a fair fight in this country, okay? We want to always have supremacy over our enemies. So after that time in the military, we decided to settle down and start a medical practice and build a career with my little family. So we found a town in North Louisiana called Minden, and I started a practice there and flourished from the very beginning. And we were very pleased to do that. In fact, I still practice medicine from time to time. As a matter of fact, if there's anybody here today who has an earache, sore throat, fever, or backache, or bad breath, I can take any form of aid. Actually, most of the practice I do goes like this. One of my daughters calls me, it's 1 a.m., and she says, "Daddy, she has an earache. What do I do?" And I go, "Why don't you call her doctor?" And she goes, "I don't want to disturb him." Okay? So anyway, that's always a lot of fun. But after a few years, I became interested in entrepreneurship. I wanted to own my own business outside of my medical practice. But I had no background in business, so I decided to buy a franchise. I bought the first Subway sandwich franchise in North Louisiana. Opened the store up in 1986. Over the years, we built 32, which still operate today. I have a management team that does that. So I know how to sign the front of the check, not just the back of the check, and how to meet a payroll, which, as you know, can be very daunting if you've ever owned a small business. We also got into real estate development and other areas. So I found myself with two careers, one in medicine and one in business. But at some point I became concerned about our nation, the direction, and there was an opportunity to run for Congress. So in 2008, I ran for the House of Representatives in Washington. That was, of course, the same year I was elected and went to Congress the same year as Barack Obama. It was a sweep. Democrats swept into office that year. And as you know, by 2010, they passed Obamacare. I fought terribly against that. I did not want to see Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act because I knew it wouldn't be affordable. And it hasn't. And it's driven up your health care costs twice what they should be. And now we have a corporatized medical care system. You don't know what your prices are. You can't shop. You can't make any kind of economic decisions about your health. You just have to do whatever that person on the other end of the telephone tells you. And by the way, that's one of the things I want to do as a U.S. Senator, is really reform all of that and bring an open marketplace for health care and lower prices. So anyway, also I disagreed a lot with our leadership that I thought too often went along with the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi. For instance, the original Iran deal. That deal went like this. We give them billions of dollars in cash, hoping that they will never enrich uranium, which they didn't even slow down on. They've been enriching it for years. And now, of course, President Trump has had to go back in and try to stop that at this point. Well, we got to vote on that, and I voted against it, but there were enough Republicans that voted for it to make it become true. Terrible deal. So 9 of us came together because of that and other things and created the House Freedom Caucus. Have y'all ever heard of
Yeah.
the House Freedom Caucus? Yeah. The purpose of the Freedom Caucus has always been to anchor conservatism in the Republican Party, especially the House of Representatives. And I was glad to do that, be on the board of directors. And however, after 4 terms, 8 years, I left Congress. I went on to the Trump administration. I was appointed to the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. Then I was promoted to Assistant Secretary of Economic Development, Department of Commerce. And then the last 10 months of the first administration of President Trump, I was detailed to the White House as Deputy Chief of Staff of the White House for President Trump. And the layout there is, and we're talking West Wing. Have y'all ever been to the East Wing, by the way, ever had a tour? You know, it's very majestic, you know, these beautiful pictures and antiques and china and all of that. That's ceremonial part of the White House. The work goes on in the West Wing. So my office was like here, Jared Kushner next to me. Next to me over here was the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. And then across the hallway, Vice President Pitts. 10 steps down this hallway was the Oval Office, where I had the honor and the privilege to serve President Trump, who was serving our nation. So I got to serve you by serving our president. And this was during the peak of the pandemic. I served on the Coronavirus Task Force. I was the liaison for the 2020 census, which again, we had to get enumerators out in the midst of this pandemic, people dying all around. It was very challenging. Also, I managed FEMA. When we had to send FEMA out to various places like hospitals and so forth that were overrun with COVID, and they didn't have enough ventilators and all of that. My job from the White House was to deploy FEMA and get them out and hopefully help these hospitals in small towns in particular with all the different problems they had to deal with the pandemic. So that really pretty much covers what I did at the White House. Of course, I returned to Louisiana. I ran for treasurer, and I've been serving as your state treasurer for 2.5 years. And I'll tell you just a little bit about that because I know you want to talk about the Senate race, and I'm happy to do that. Really, there's 2 or 3 things that we've worked on, like modernization. The appropriations process was being done manually. You see, whenever a city or an NGO or somebody receives money from appropriations, we have to have a contract with them called a cooperative endeavor agreement. And we have to have the terms of that contract, and we have to have receipts and all of that. And that was done by hand before, manually. A lot of mistakes, and it was slow. We've modernized that. Now it's all automated with use of computers. Also, we brought transparency to the school system. You see, never in Louisiana have you been able to look at the finances of any public school or a charter school for that matter. And so we stood up a computer system that's user-friendly, and you can go in and look at any school, whether it's charter or public school, and you can see what their finances are. And did we find things? You better believe we did. We found your tax money was paying for Mardi Gras tickets, it was paying for bar bills and for dinner bills in New Orleans, fancy restaurants. In one case, a massage. And we found one school in New Orleans, Noble Mines, that had spent $600,000 in 6 months. And of course, we turned that over to the legislative auditor. So now there's transparency. Also, I fought back against BlackRock and companies like that, investment companies, that were investing money via ESG, which means that your money is getting a lower return on investment using social engineering. We also blocked Bank of America from being a fiscal agent for boards and commissions here because they were canceling people's accounts just because they were conservative, because they were Republicans or gun owners or Christians. And we blocked them. As long as you discriminate against Louisiana citizens, then you're not going to. They do banking business here, but not directly with the government for that reason. Although we're happy to always re-engage if they can interact. So that gives you an idea about that. So before I take questions, let me talk about the Senate race. So I announced 17 months ago that I'm running against the United States Senator Bill Cassidy. Yeah. And we all know the elephant in the room on this, that he voted to pick Trump in the second. He's offered no proof of that, no evidence. President Trump was not responsible for January 6th. What we know is actually on January 3rd, there was a meeting with Nancy Pelosi and the mayor, and President Trump offered the National Guard 10,000 to 20,000 members to protect the Capitol. He said it was going to be a bad day, and Nancy Pelosi turned him down. Now you might say, well, why didn't you override her? The Speaker of the House is in control of the Capitol, not the President. The President has no authority, and he cannot do it unilaterally. So that was a huge mistake. Someone asked Nancy Pelosi recently, well, why didn't you allow the National Guard? And she shook her finger and said, shut up. So she doesn't want to talk about it, but we need to hear from her. So anyway, our campaign has gone well. An independent poll came out today showing me in the lead. I'm at 28 points, Letlow at 27 points. It's Emerson College poll. It's totally independent. Bill Cassidy down at 21%, so it's looking like the runoff is going to be between me and Julia Letlow. Favorabilities, of course, Bill Cassidy is very unfavorable. My favorabilities are twice those of Julia Letlow, and her three times. She's +9, I'm +27, so I'm 3 times her favorabilities. And her unfavorabilities are twice mine. So we're looking good on that. This is consistent with my polls that we've been doing. There have been a lot of independent polls, but they're not published. Why? Because the people that they're supporting are not number one in the polls. So that's why you're not seeing polls. But finally, Emerson did go public with the polls, so we're happy with that. We have 20,000 yard signs spread across the state, and we have 250 volunteers. Now, when it comes to financing, both Cassidy and Letlow have tens of millions of dollars, which I do not have. I'm largely financing my own campaign. And the negative ads against her, that's coming from Cassidy, not from me. Their attack ads coming against me, those are from her. And the main thing she's saying is this. Number one, that I voted against a Trump border security movement. The only problem with that, Trump was not in the White House when I was in Congress. Or another way to say it is, I was out of Congress when Trump was actually in office. I left the Congress January 2nd of 2017. He wasn't sworn into office until January 20th of 2017. In fact, when I went into the White House, I was on the Kushner team that helped build the wall. So that is a complete lie, folks, but they're putting millions of dollars behind it. Also, there's an old video of me, you may have seen it, parts of it, 18 years ago where I'm giving my first speech for Congress. And I was talking about migrant farm workers, and I accidentally slipped up and said, we need more illegal aliens. But then I quickly corrected myself and said, I mean migrant farm workers. Well, they're running that with millions of dollars, and they're clipping off the correction and saying that I'm saying we need more illegal aliens. So those are just flat dishonest, folks. But they're putting millions of dollars, and I get a lot of inquiries on that. They're also claiming that I voted for carbon capture and sequestration when I was in Congress. Not true. I never voted for it. There were only 2 bills that contained it, both of them from President Obama, and I voted against both of them. I voted for traditional oil and gas bills. I voted for some appropriations bills, and there were some studies of carbon capture and enhanced oil recovery, which is a totally different technology. It's not carbon storage. It is using carbon dioxide to get that last 15% oil out of the well. We've been doing that 100 years. That's no big deal. Anyway, despite all of those dollars being spent against me, we're still leading in the polls. So we're very happy with that. And so the other question I get a lot is, well, why didn't Trump endorse me? Why did he endorse Julia Levin? And the answer to it is this. Knowing that Jeff Fleming, knowing that he wanted to replace Cassidy, he decided that he would promote Julia Levin over 2 years ago. And he pushed on with his buddies. He's got a lot of buddies around the Trump team. And they've been pushing for that to get her endorsement for quite some time. Meanwhile, after I announced, I tried to contact President Trump to talk with him. I hadn't spoken to him in 5 years because, I lost contact. He left the administration. I did. We just didn't have contact. Well, Jeff Fleming managed with the team around President Trump to not allow me to speak with him. So I never got to speak with him until later, and this is what happened. So we're coming up on filing, and just 7 days out from filing, I began to get calls from the White House. High-level people, not the president, but high-level people saying, look, we'd like to offer you a job so you'll drop out of the race and let Julia Levin win this. And I said, no way. I said, it's not that I wouldn't love to have it, be with the administration once again, but really I'm convinced now, I'm committed that I want to be the next United States Senator to replace Bill Cassidy. And so I got several calls. In fact, Ralph Abraham called me. He was, at the time, he was in the CDC as deputy director of the CDC. And he offered me his job, which legally he can't do. That tells me somebody told him to call him to offer the job. And he said he was moving on to another position at the CDC. But then, of course, I turned it down. But then a few days later, he actually left the CDC. I don't know whether he was terminated or whether he quit. And then he came to join her campaign, Julia Levin. Anyway, I turned all those jobs down. So finally, and I knew this was going to happen, I got a call from somebody that has connections with Trump and is a friend of mine. And he said, the president would like to speak with you. And I said, okay, I'd love to speak with you. So we talked for about 15 minutes. I kind of got him reacquainted with me. And he started saying, well, is there something we can work out here? And I said, well, sir, I was one of the first congressmen that endorsed you in 2016. I said I was in your administration all 4 years. I was your deputy chief of staff. I said, no one has been more loyal to you than I have. And then he asked me an interesting question. He said, how long have you been married? Can you imagine Donald Trump asking me that question? I guess maybe he was checking in on my loyalty. I said, we've been married 27 years. And he finally says, well, you're fantastic. He said, why didn't you come talk to me? And I said, sir, I was completely blocked. No one would talk with me or allow me to talk with you. And so what turned out to happen is that Jeff Fleming, our governor, using all of his political powers, was able to put this into effect. And then when information came out later, with Julia let know some of her problems with ethics and the DEI stances and all of that, President Trump was not happy. And so he did relate to me that if something changed, he would endorse me. So that's kind of where we stand on that. That's why that happened. I just frankly never had the opportunity to make my case to President Trump. And so I'm having to make the case to you, which is really what I intended to do in the first place. I don't think any politician or person of power should determine who you vote for to represent you in Washington or in Baton Rouge for that matter. I think that should be your choice. And certainly you know that I'm very supportive of President Trump's agenda and his policies. So if I'm elected, I'm definitely going to work with President Trump. I agree virtually with everything that he does from a policy standpoint. And so I think that tells you the story, but I'd be happy to take questions.
Does anybody want to start with the first question? I have plenty if y'all don't have one yet. Okay. Lawrence?
Two questions, actually. Well, and just a comment. I was fortunate. We talked in your office a couple of weeks back, and I will tell you that when I was running the food bank, it was a night and day difference between his Department of Treasury and his predecessor. And I will tell you, he talked about streamlining and making it much easier. When you're a small NGO, you need that. And he was they returned phone calls on a timely basis. They were helpful and streamlined. So just a little bit of a plug there. Two questions. Number one, the governor's talking about changing the primaries. How is that going to affect you?
Sure.
And number two is, Thune refuses to bring things up that seem to be more important to the American people. How can we make that change?
Okay, well, let me approach the first one, which is on everyone's mind today. As you probably heard yesterday, the Supreme Court came out and declared that the current map that we have, which is based on racial gerrymandering, that's why we have clear fields today, is unconstitutional. It violates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And many of us were opposed to him doing that. That is the governor. The governor was the one who forced this. And then now we're in a situation where it shouldn't have ever been done. And what are we going to do? And the decision comes down just before early voting begins and after mail-out ballots have already been sent. So we got a mess on our hands. We really do. It should have never been done this way. Anyway, the information I'm told is that the governor is going to be given the power to suspend the House election. But there are other elections that will go forward, including the Senate race on May 16th. So that's the latest information I have. That it may actually affect all House elections. Probably will. Certainly the ones that may be in the vicinity when it comes to, they'll have to totally remap, of course. In fact, I just can't see any way, if they're going to do it this way, that they're not going to be able to, they'll have to suspend and change all of the congressional districts. Because you know how it works. If you push up on one, you're going to push down on another. And it's just, it's geometry is what it is, statistics. So, but I don't know, but I've spoken to a couple of legislators, and they tell me all they know at this point is that it's the House race that is likely to be suspended, but there's likely to be litigation over this. So as it stands, the Senate race, you'll be able to vote for the first time on Saturday. Saturday will be early voting, and then May 16th will be the actual election day. And we'll see if they change that. I certainly hope they don't, because we got enough confusion over this as it is. A lot of questions. And I think your question, sir, has to do with the filibuster and the Save America Act, I think.
Yes, sir.
The Save America Act is something we desperately need because it requires you to use a photo ID to vote. Well, you Democrats say, no, we shouldn't have that because, somehow you're blocking people from voting who may not have an ID. I don't know of a living human on earth, in this country that doesn't have some form of ID. Because you can't do anything without it. You can't fly on an airplane. There's just many things that are required. And oddly enough, people like Danny, who is the socialist mayor of New York City, he won't even let the city hire shovelers of snow unless they have 2 forms of ID. So why in the world, the most important civic responsibility you have, would we not ask for your ID? So the problem is Democrats, except for maybe one veteran, are opposed to this, and that's just not enough to get across the finish line. And frankly, I think there's some Republicans who are reluctant to vote for the Save My America Act.
So how can we replace Boone, since Boone is refusing to take on this fight?
Well, since I'm not on the inside, I don't know how much is Boone and how much is other members. I think there are a lot of members who are conflicted about whether or not to do away with the filibuster. We know if we do away with it and we go to a 51% majority or 51 vote majority, that it will end forever. We never, and then it'll be difficult to block Democrats when they come across with some crazy stuff that we've been able to block. So I don't know whether replacing Boone would solve this. Remember, to nuke it, you have to get a majority to vote to do that. So it would take more than Boone. It would take really all the Republicans and maybe some Democrats even to nuke that. So I'm not taking any sides or positions because I'm just not inside. But I think we should do everything possible to pass the Save My America Act, that's for sure. And they're talking about doing it through reconciliation. That's another way. But it's a difficult parliamentarian motion because that's to get 51% or 51 votes through reconciliation. The parliamentarian blocks all policies. It's not supposed to include in policies. It's only having to do with spending or revenue. And unfortunately, this is a policy thing. So maybe they can drive a square peg in a round hole. I hope they can. That would be really good.
We've got all these amendments coming up, and they've got one to eliminate inventory tax. And I can remember going all the way back to Edwards with Louisiana, how that was going to solve all our school problems and all this other kind of stuff. And I've just taken the stance to vote against every amendment that's come forward because the language in an amendment is 90% of the time misleading, and you really don't know what you're actually voting for.
Yeah.
So how would the state fill that gap if they got rid of the inventory?
Well, I don't know exactly what the governor has in mind on that. All I can tell you is we have a $300 million surplus this year. I think we can cut taxes without cutting any services. And I think as we cut taxes, we get more investment, more and more companies, and more jobs that pay well. So anything we can do to cut taxes, whether it's inventory tax, sales tax, income tax, I mean, we have to do it responsibly. But I do think if we're going to be competitive with Texas, Tennessee, and Florida, we also have no personal income tax. And I think in many cases, lower corporate taxes. I think that's what we're going to have to do. Also, we have got to solve our insurance problem. We desperately need tort reform, especially when it comes to commercial insurance. These companies with fleets, they're dying. They're going to other states because they just can't make it here. And the legislature and the governor is just not doing the job we need taking care of. If we lower that, we're going to start getting more economic activity. And let me say parenthetically, the modern economy in this country is moving to the south, folks. It's leaving California in technology. It's leaving New York State when it comes to fintech and financial industries. It's leaving Illinois. It's coming to the south, but it is not coming to Louisiana. And that's the reason why your kids, when they finish college or whatever secondary education they have, they're going to another state, most likely Texas. That's where all my kids are, because they can find better jobs and better opportunities. There's no reason why we can't do that here. We're just stuck in the old patterns that we can't seem to break out.
Dr. Fleming, just quickly, on the gentleman's question about that amendment, it's the revenue stabilization fund that is proposed to be rated for
Yes.
this. Is that the same thing as the
No,
300 million
his is
surplus?
inventory tax. And I think they had made that up to, with the last tax bill that they did, they left it up to the parishes to decide about whether they would keep or get rid of the inventory taxes. And I'm not on the revenue side, I'm not on the tax side. See, we in the Treasury have nothing to do with tax and revenue. That's the revenue department. So I'm not really deep into that. I just like to see lower taxes. What you're talking about, Danielle, is we have two reserve funds in Louisiana. They're both well above $1 billion. And the idea here is if this bill passes, I believe it's Amendment 3. If it passes, the idea is it pays down the debt on the teacher's retirement program, which then produces a cash flow that instead of going to pay off debt on the retirement account, will actually be turned into teacher pay raises. So that is the procedure as I understand it. And we still have plenty in the other reserve fund. So I don't see a danger I'm not necessarily promoting this or against it. I'm just saying that I don't see anything that's fiscally irresponsible here because we still have plenty of money. We've been building on our reserve funds for years. And the reason why we have them is sometimes we go through low revenue times, like a recession, or maybe the price of oil goes down, and those revenues go down, and we have to have something to take care of us, and we don't have to go into additional debt. And that's what those reserve funds are for. But in this case, I think the numbers work out. That's about the best I can say on this. And whether you think that's a good idea, we all think teachers should be paid. We want to retain our teachers. And I do want to see debt paid down on our retirement systems.
All right. I'll put out my opinion here. We are recommending, not we the people, but me and my co-host at the State of Freedom are recommending to vote no for everything except for Amendment 2, which is the St. George one, because of the way that they're trying to do it, not because we don't want those things achieved, like you said, but just because it's not necessarily a sustainable way to achieve those, or the appropriate way to achieve it. If we have a surplus, why do we need to be robbing
I
this
don't
other?
necessarily disagree with Danielle. I'm just telling you the outline of the plan,
Yeah.
and I don't see an immediate risk. But as far as digging down deep in it, is this the best way to do things? I'm not in a position to recommend one way or another. That's why we have Chris Alexander and Danielle, because they go deep into these policies, and I trust them, and I agree with them. And you can also go to other sources like CAR. What does CAR stand for?
Public Affairs Research Council, I think.
They also do some deep research. So I'm not promoting it, as I say. I'm just telling you the way it's supposed to work. We don't see any immediate danger on the surface that somehow we're going to run out of money and go upside down as a state. That we don't see. But is it the best way to deploy that money? Again, you need to talk to these good folks to find out.
Is there another question?
Let me ask one. I know where you stand on the carbon capture sequestration. Now, I followed all of the debates and I watched your debate in committee. My understanding is if we could get rid of the Q45 tax credit, that all of this would go away. What say you?
You're absolutely correct on that. You see, carbon capture and sequestration, let me go into that a little bit because it's important to understand this. This goes back to the Al Gore ideas about carbon dioxide getting in the atmosphere, and somehow this causes global warming. That's never been verified. Look, the Earth warms and cools over cycles, and we know that when it warms, CO2 goes up. And that was happening long before we had a combustion engine. So to mitigate that, he'll tell you some trashy thing that makes no sense. So this is a scam, folks. President Trump has said this over and over again. He's totally right about it. But anyway, we tried wind and we tried solar. Neither one of them has worked. Look, the Netherlands has had windmills for centuries, and the technology we have today is no better than it was 500 years ago. The voltaic cell, which is what the solar panel, that was invented 200 years ago. It's barely any better than it was then. It doesn't restore to the grid to any significant degree, and it's fallen by the wayside, and it only existed as long as people thought it was cool and government was willing to subsidize it. So then they came up with a third idea, which is even worse, which is we capture the carbon dioxide in the processing of oil and gas, manufacturing and other things, and then we take it and we put it in a pipeline, we send it to a place, we drill a deep hole, we stuff it down there, and we cap it forever. That's the idea. Now, is carbon dioxide in that form dangerous? You better believe it. If you kill people, it has killed people. It has other products in it too, petroleum products. And the proposal is that goes into the land of Louisiana, as much as two-thirds across the nation will be right here in Louisiana. Who pays for it? Do you pay for it? Yes, through your taxes, your federal taxes, through the 45Q tax credits that are in the IRS. Hundreds of billions of dollars have been set aside for this, and the oil and gas companies are hot on it because they stand to make a lot of money from it. But philosophically, it's a dumb idea, but they're all for it because it's profitable. And you got CEOs who will parachute out with huge amounts of money and everything because they're going to bring money to their shareholders, and that's how that system works. If you repeal, in fact, I've already vowed, the first bill I will submit to the United States Senate is a bill to fully repeal the 45Q tax credits. And this all ends immediately, folks. If there's no tax money paying for it, then the oil companies will go away because they can't make any money. There's no market. They can't sell anything to you on this. But look, this is the thing that people are upset about, is that they're given the right of eminent domain, which means that a private company, foreign or domestic, can come and take your land and put that plume that goes miles around. You go under your house, under your school, under your business, come right back up, pipelines everywhere. They can take this against your will. That is in Louisiana law today. Now, many of us believe it's unconstitutional, but they can. They can actually take your property to make profit and no other reason. Eminent domain was for power lines and sewer pipes and things like that. But they can actually just say, look, your land is just right for what we need, and if you don't like it, they'll litigate it, and you'll lose, because they have a lot more Harvard lawyers than you do. And this is in law today. It was passed in 2020, and some follow-on bills. So at the state level, it's totally under the control of the governor. The governor approves the permits. There are over 65 waiting out there to go. But he did put up a moratorium, so they're going slowly and watching where you are on this. But I guarantee you can stop it. It's not too late to stop this. And remember, the value of the land will go down, and you'll lose your mineral rights because you cannot drill through this plume. So anyway, to answer your question, yes, we can stop it with that. One senator
We're going to depend on you to carry that to water.
Absolutely, you can count on me. Now, I still have to get other members to go along with this, but this was stopped in South Dakota and in Iowa. And we can stop it here, we can stop it in Washington. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So ideally, to me, it seems that if there was a coordination of effort between our Congress and our governor, that would be perfect for issues that are important to Louisiana.
Sure.
And fortunately, I think having all Republicans would solve that problem. However, with the governor causing friction already with your campaign, once you become our senator, won't that make your work more difficult?
Her question, because I know her voice was a little low here, is because there's this battle that I'm having with the governor, who is doing everything he can to keep me from winning this race. He's going to oil and gas companies and demanding that they give him millions of dollars to go into her campaign and in PACs. And so we're in a battle. I'm calling him out on it and saying, look, folks, either you want the governor to choose your next senator or you want to choose your next senator. It's up to you. But look, the thing about politics is that you really should have a short memory about those kind of things. Because if you really care about serving the people, that is the paramount issue always. And I can work with anybody in politics, although I may disagree with them at one point. There was somebody mentioned that they saw this committee meeting where I was challenged on having ever voted for carbon capture. And one of the biggest challengers was Neil Weiser, state representative. We've been friends for years. And he was pressing me on it, and I was answering, and it got a little contentious. And then I smiled and I said, y'all, we've been friends for years, and we're going to continue to be friends. So I don't see this as any impediment at all, because what's important here is doing the work in Louisiana. We have to maintain those positive relationships. Absolutely.
Can I ask one more?
Yes, sir.
Voter integrity.
Yes.
President Trump has made the statement that he wanted hand-marked and counted paper ballots.
Right.
What is your opinion? How do you feel?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think more and more evidence is rolled out that the 2020 election was cheated, if not stolen. We don't have the final results. We know there were 300,000 or more ballots in Fulton County, Georgia. It never got certified. We don't know where they came from. Trump only lost about 11,000 votes here. We saw where he was ahead until a certain time when they closed all these polls, and then all of a sudden reopened them, and every vote after that was for Biden. That's never happened. But here's the thing: this the empirical information that's convincing to me. So if you looked at the election before the 2020, which would have been the 2016 presidential election, you saw that for every 4-year cycle, the number of people voting in the U.S. president race goes up, right? In 2020, it went way up. And then in 2024, it came down to where it was nominal with the other years. And we find that if you look at it, there's probably 5 million more votes that were cast than you could have possibly predicted. And why? In the middle of a pandemic where people are afraid to even go anyplace. The explanation for that is this: it was a great opportunity to blame COVID, to ignore all the laws and rules. And that's exactly what happened. They just did what they wanted to. They took advantage of that opportunity. We should never allow that to happen again. We should never take away people's constitutional rights, no matter what kind of pandemic we have, including shutting churches down and keeping Walmart and bars open. That is all ridiculous. So that's just a lesson learned, and we've got going forward. We need to be very steady on these issues. Anyway, I hope that addresses your question. Okay. Anything else?
Anything else? Anyone, Lawrence?
It's election time. We always hear, I'm for this. I can tell you that a group of us were in that committee meeting when carbon capture and the eminent domain, and many of us were there to talk against, at least primarily, the eminent domain. I can tell you that he truly was there. He fought it tooth and nail. And I will tell you that I want to apologize for people of Terrebonne, because the representative who was just rude to you and embarrassing and inappropriate doesn't represent the people who you sitting here. Maybe legally she does, but her conduct was there. But you really did fight tooth and nail and stay. And the people who were also in this room that were there, thank you for that fight, because it wasn't political, it was genuine.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's where my heart is. Some people say, well, gee, you're jumping on the bandwagon now because there's some political advantage. Not at all. Because I fought against this in Congress, not against carbon capture, but against, y'all remember Solyndra when that was, that idea came up, $500 million, that we were going to steal the solar panel industry from China. And I was totally against that. Whatever happened, they never opened that factory up. We have no idea what happened to the money. We're pretty sure it went into people's pockets and into political campaigns. So President Trump has got it right. This stuff is all a Green New Deal scam. And the sooner we stop doing this nonsense, the better off this country's going to be. And by the way, there are other emerging technologies in the energy that are wonderful. Miniaturized nuclear reactors. You can run an entire city on a very small reactor. You realize that an aircraft carrier, which is a floating city of 5,000 or more people, you know how often you have to replace a nuclear reactor? We put in new bars or whatever you call those things. Every 25 years. They last 25 years. You don't replace it after 25, you put a new one in there, another 25, and then you retire the ship. Just think if we could do that with cities and other things. So we have plenty of hydrogen and other technologies that will work. We need to put our money and research into those things. And we just don't have the abilities, capabilities of technologies with wind and solar. It just doesn't work. And let's quit wasting money and time on those things.
All right. Well, would you join me in thanking Dr. Fleming?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking all those questions. And y'all did a great job because every single one on my list is checked off. So thank you very much. Before I let you all go, I just want to put in a plug. Because this is a group that believes in election integrity, the best place for you to vote is on election day. The best time for you to vote is in person on election day because there's less time for them to do something fishy. And that's probably the easiest way to describe it. But please, if you can't, vote early. But if you can, please make a plan to vote on May 16th. Also want to put a plug in one more time for the shrimp boil. That is on May 29th. And you can purchase your ticket for a shrimp boil on your way out. Anything else, Sharon?
Well, we just wanted to present Treasurer Fleming with
We just want to let you know that we appreciate you. A lot of us big fans. At the, well, especially the hearing on March 31st, when you were being drilled and threatened and all those things. But we just appreciate you, and we wanted to present you with a hat. You and your gentleman that came with you.
Okay. I'll make him wear the
And-
blue. I'll wear the red.
Now, do you fish? Do you golf?
Sure.
Well then, we also wanted to present y'all with fishing and golf towels. These are very nice. Hook it on your belt and go fishing. And this is my own personal plug for the shrimp because my husband and I are commercial fishermen. So to take it all home, I wanted to give you this bag. It says Friends, and just to make an announcement to everybody here. I know y'all know. Friends don't let friends eat imported shrimp.
That's the important battle is to end the imported shrimp, or certainly restricted severely, so we have to keep our minds.
And it should be labeled, shouldn't it? If it's coming back.
So Southern Shrimp Alliance will be making an appointment to have a conversation with you soon.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all. Vicki, you have something? Okay, if y'all wouldn't mind just hanging tight for a few seconds. Vicki wants us to have a group picture. If you stay with us long enough, you'll know that Vicki loves group pictures.
So we're just gonna